Yar, it's me, Duck, and I be here with Moist Gaming to give you a ghostly guide to Maw of Souls. Joining me is Forset. Let's set sail. Before we can board the Nagafar, we have to take down Ymeron, the fallen king.
First up, Ymeron will periodically cast Dark Slash that deals over 1 million shadow damage to the tank. When you see this ability coming in, just use some kind of active mitigation and everything should be fine.
When Ymeron begins to cast Screams of the Dead, a small purple circle will appear 12 yards around his model that, when the cast ends, will fear anybody inside. When this ability comes out, it's simple to run out of the area to avoid the fear and then go back in on the boss. If you happen to get feared by it, the healer can dispel it, but if too many get feared, the healer will be most likely frustrated. So run out, let it be finished casting, and run back in.
The boss will then begin to cast Winds of Northrend, which will send all players flying backwards. The easiest thing to do for this as a tank melee is to just put your back against the wall when this is coming in to almost avoid the knockback completely.
Ymeron's last ability is Bane, which will create a fuck ton of small purple orbs to roam around the encounter area randomly. Coming into contact with one of the orbs will take a rather decent chunk of health from you, as well as doing a small bit of group-wide damage. But this will cause the orbs to despawn. This is something that you want to happen, because depending on how many orbs are still active, after 14 seconds he will then cast Arise Fallen, which converts any remaining orbs into Risen Warriors that will deal 120k shadow damage to anybody within 3 yards of their spawn point, and if no orbs were soaked, you will be overrun by skeletons which will wreck your tanks. We found the easiest way to deal with this was to absorb as many orbs spaced out as our healer could handle counter healing. Then, once the adds had spawned, they were gathered by the tank, stunned, and quickly AoE down.
Based off a player, and I think it was based off the shaman that time.
Now, Rise Fallen. Oh god!
Misdirect! My hero!
I think I understand the heroic mechanic now. I'm dead.
I felt that Ymeron was a nuisance of a fight, just lots of movement and then burning down ads whenever they spawn. It wasn't really doing anything intriguing, it was just a hassle.
I don't know if I agree there. I mean, it's definitely a hassle, but it's a fun hassle. It wasn't like, this is just annoying. There's lots of things that kept people, active in doing things, whether it was trying to absorb the orbs to stop less ads from spawning, or, if you were a melee trying to run out of that shit. Okay, that one's probably annoying as fuck and pointless, but the Winds of Northrend was okay in a way. It adds something to it. I definitely think the heroic mechanic makes for a better fight than what the normal one was. I think it's an okay first boss.
The second boss of Maw of Souls, and the first boss actually aboard the ship Naglfar, is Harboron. We are not exactly sure what his role aboard the ship is, but we're assuming he's either the wheelman or a sea shanty. Harboron will cast Fragment on a random player, stunning them for 3 seconds and causing shadowy fragments of that player's soul to start wandering around aimlessly. The player affected by Fragment will take increasing damage based on how many copies of him are alive and how long they have been alive. After 1 minute, they will respawn. At first, the damage on the player will seem non-existent, but as it ramps up, it will be hard for the healers to take care of. They are a pain in the ass to deal with since they wander around, but it's safe to kill them before your DPS dies.
Harboron will also summon an ad into the fight called Shackled Servitors. These mobs simply stand still and cast Void Snap, which deals ramping shadow damage to all players. Kill these ads as soon as they spawn, and they become a non-issue.
Harboron will cast Cosmic Scythe, turning to a random player and calling down a rain of scythes in a line in front of him that will deal 350 arcane damage to anybody hit. The visual effect on this is more imposing than the damage dealt. Avoid them, move out of the way, and you should be fine.
Harboron's most interesting mechanic by far is Netherrip, which he would cast to summon 3 pools of shit to appear on the ground that will have a staggered spawn. Every new pool of purple shit to spawn will cause all others in the encounter area to grow bigger. These pools last for 30 seconds, so before the 30 seconds are up, you will have some pretty huge void zones covering the floor. There isn't really any way to deal with this, other than to just avoid standing in them, even though they do cover up huge amounts of the room.
So how do you feel about Harbor Run?
That fight surprised me. I don't know if it was just something they added as the alpha was going on through build to build, or if this was a heroic mechanic. It wasn't clear. But the shit that he puts on the floor, like when we were doing that fight, I was like, oh god, what is this? And it started growing, and I was like, why is it growing? Is an ad casting? But when you realised that it was actually part of his, his own cast, it wasn't really that interesting. But it felt like it did when I thought it was new. And then his other abilities, when he fractures people and summons 3 of their souls, that's not fun, because they just like run around forever and like, I guess if you're a ranger it's okay, but when you're a melee chasing ads everywhere and they're running away from you, it's not great.
But besides for that, I think the addition of the swirls, whether it was a heroic mechanic or just recently added in the past, it felt intriguing, but not overly powered or overly complicated.
Yeah, the problem with it was that it was just like in these random locations throughout the entire thing, and it wasn't really like, forcing you away. It wasn't trapping you or making you move to the other end of the ship. It was just like all of these random circles that are just kind of getting bigger, but you can move around them.
The final boss of Maw of Souls is Helia, a 2-phase fight. The first phase will be mainly dealing with killing off her tentacles, which will also cause Helia to take damage. The 2 types of tentacles you will be dealing with in the first phase of this encounter will be Grasping Tentacles and Destructor Tentacles. First off, the Grasping Tentacles will just be holding on the Naglfar off the sides. These are the least important tentacles to tackle, so it should just be dotted up or damaged when there aren't any Destructor Tentacles available. The Destructor Tentacles will break through the floor of the Naglfar and will need to be tanked. They will use Rapid Rupture on the tank, dealing 100k physical damage 3 times, and leave behind a nasty bleed that ticks every half second for 6 seconds. Whenever they are not actively being tanked or with melee in range, they will cast Slam, dealing increasing group-wide damage. After killing the Destructor Tentacle, there will be a hole left in the ship that will stay until the end of the encounter.
Periodically through the fight, Helia will pierce the floor of the Naglfar with her tentacles. Then after 3 seconds, dealing 800k nature damage and knocking back anybody standing near them. These tentacles will leave a permanent hole in the ship floor that more tentacles can appear from at any time, so be on the lookout. Helia will inflict random targets with a dispellable debuff called Taint of the Sea, which deals 100k frost damage every second for 21 seconds. When this debuff is removed, it will explode, dealing 131k frost damage to all players, and leave behind a green orb. This orb will explode a few seconds after appearing, dealing 400k frost damage to anybody within 5 yards of it.
The final Phase 1 mechanic of Helia is Blackwater Barrage, which will send a belligerent Blackwater barrage of blistering cold in a line down one side of the ship, dealing insane damage to anyone hit. Now, we only saw this ability twice in the fight, so it was hard to tell if it's the same side every time, but the 2 times that she did use it, it traveled down the right side of the ship. We think it might be dictated by which hand she raised before casting, but it's best to be ready to move as soon as you can.
There is a small intermission between Phase 1 and Phase 2, where Helia will submerge underwater and begin to bombard the ship with tentacles, debuffs, and void zones. During this, take the time to relax and dodge stuff. After she is done bombarding the ship, she will crash through the Naglfar, tearing through the front half. This is where you fight her yourself. During the rest of the fight, the ship will be assaulted by turbulent waters, causing small orbs to shoot out of the water at a targeted location, which deals 200k frost damage within 2 yards. For these, just watch your feet and dance around them. As this fight progresses, these become more frequent.
During Phase 2, Helia retains Taint of the Sea and Piercing Tentacles, along with gaining the new ability Torrent, which after a short cast deals 50k frost damage to multiple random targets.
And finally, if there are no targets for Helia to melee, she will begin to cast Wing Buffet. That deals increasing party-wide damage, so just make sure as the tank you never leave the boss unless she is in the intermission phase. The fight will end at around 70% or so this probably won't be the last time we see Helia.
So, thoughts on Helia?
this fight is like a mix of being so good and so bad. So like it has everything you would want from like the way the fight looks. And if you were to watch it, it probably looks really fucking cool. But then when you get around to doing it, it's just not that great. Like it's cool. The things that happen in the fight are cool, but it's like the destructive tentacles. It's like, okay, go over here and tank one of these things. It's all right. And then you do it again, and maybe again. I can't remember if there's a third one. And then like, boom! She breaks through the ship, and it's like, whoa, that was cool. And then you just kind of attack her until she leaves. All the stuff happening around you is pretty cool, but when it comes down, it's just like, I'm just attacking this thing, standing, like moving left to right to avoid these little swirly things, and that's it.
Yeah, the first phase I thought was really intriguing with the tentacles breaking the ship apart and having to DPS them down. But then once you get the second phase, it's really just burn the boss. There's nothing like that you have to worry about hitting like any type of soften rage or any serious mechanics to watch out for. It's literally just, okay, move left to right a little bit and keep hitting the boss. I mean, it is such a beautiful fight between all the artwork on the ship, and then once she's breaking it, you can see the skybox in the background with the waves crashing everywhere.
Oh, it's beautiful.
That's really neat. And then once you realize that you're just, oh yeah, I saw that, I was like, oh, that's amazing artwork, and it's really great that they have it in there. It's not just static. But then you realize what the boss you're fighting is just tank and spank. You're like, okay, well, this is about the end of my intrigue. Overall, I thought that Maw of Souls wasn't a great dungeon, but it wasn't bad either. I feel like the transitioning from the shore onto the ship was really neat, but then once you're inside the ship, it has such a small area of play, it feels cramped, and it messes with camera vision a lot.
My opinions on this dungeon is that it's what Grimrail Depot should have been.
Yeah, it's definitely an improvement over Grimrail Depot. Repo.
Like the dungeon, it's got the whole setup. It's got the same kind of thing as Grimrail, where you don't start on the vehicle. You just kind of like make your way to it. We don't really know how we get locked up yet. So you make your way through the ship, and then you come out of it, and it's like, whoa! You just stop and you take a look around. So you got these like monsoons flying around, the waves. Oh my god! Like if you just took a second before jumping down to where Hellier spawns from, and you just take a look around. You can feel the waves moving the ship, and some waves are just huge, and then like they'll go down, and then you see everything. You see like hundreds of monsoons in the distance. You can see the horizon in the back. Oh, it's beautiful. I loved the look of this dungeon.
The second half was really neat. I did not enjoy fighting inside the ship though.
Luckily, we only spent, 5 trash packs down there, I think. But yeah, it's a relatively short dungeon, but I think it's very, very well done.
If you enjoyed this guide, as always, we're Moist Gaming. Leave a comment, hit that like button, subscribe, watch one of our older guides. Keep an eye out for our newer ones, because we're going to keep them coming, whether you like it or not.
And we'll see you guys next time.